the same institution at the same time many moons ago, University of North Dakota. So I said, come to my house, you can stay with me, I'm alone, blah, blah, blah. And I get there and he puts this machine in my kitchen and says, Doc, can I hook it up? I said, knock yourself out, hook it up. What is it? I had no clue. And that's how I got introduced to Kangen Water. He hooked up this machine, I drank the water, and I said, wait a minute, this is different. It was like an instant recognition that by swallowing this big glass of water, it had a totally different effect from anything I had ever drunk. And I've been drinking a lot, actually, in my lifetime, and not necessarily water, so there you go. I'm of German and Polish extraction, and we're sort of weary of water. We like it to be treated like beer or wine or something. In any case, I noticed that there was a dramatic difference, and I said, I could live with that. I like that. And I bought a machine, and sort of the rest evolved. I got informed about the compensation plan and this, that, and the other thing. And I made a video touting my experience, which Fred was alluding to earlier. It's legal to make a video about your own experience. I didn't make any outrageous claims. I said it tasted good to me. It felt different, and I certainly felt better in that certain of my human conditions, like my blood pressure, were improved with drinking the water. And I actually, I sort of go up and down in my weight, left and right. I actually lost some weight and so on. And I made that video, and I guess it was very popular. Next thing I know, they asked me to be the medical advisor for this company, and I accepted, and I was sort of left out to decide what was I going to do as a medical advisor. Was I going to, put on a hat and be like Karnak the Magnificent and give spiritual and other advice? I saw myself more or less as being a person who should embrace the physiology and the function of the water and try to explain it on a scientific basis. Because Francesca is a naturopathic doctor. I'm an allopathic doctor. Nonetheless, we all practice evidence-based medicine. If we don't, we're useless because we can't defend what it is we're asking to do to people. If I ask you to take drug number 42B and I have no rational reason or no hardcore scientific reasons as to why you should take it, then I'm a fraud or a quack, and there's lots of those, believe me. In any case, Mother Nature provides us with, it's been known since antiquity that natural herbs, natural substances have healing properties. The ancient Egyptians knew it, the Greeks knew it. Hippocrates was the first epidemiologist. I mean, he knew, for example, that you cured malaria by getting people away from the swamps and the mosquitoes. So it's an ancient concept, and I endeavor to do research on the water, on electrolyzed reduced water. There's a lot of literature about it. And bit by bit, I would give talks on how the water works, why hydration is good, what happens to your organ function when you are dehydrated, and so on. But what had eluded this whole industry, and Enagic in particular, because it makes the best machine, it makes the best quality water, we had no in vitro, that is in the cell or in vivo within the whole body, evidence of the function of the water. Gene Salinger will tell you that the FDA requires that if you tout a product to have a health benefit, it has to have a structure function effect. So the aspirin has to relieve the headache, and that headache relief has to be demonstrable, and you do that by clinical trials. You study people with headache, and you give them an aspirin, and when it's all said and done, 90+% of them have to have relief from their pain for it to be significant, and then you can say, yes, there is a structure function effect. So you drink this water, the distributor will talk to the clients and will say, look, if you drink this water, we have these wonderful antioxidant effects. We have a water that removes pesticides, and look, here's the residual. We have a water that is alkaline, and so on. But here's the rub. If you stick an ORP meter into the water and it's 500, let's say, does that mean that when you swallow it, your blood ORP or your blood antioxidant activity goes up? And the problem with the water has been that no one has ever been able to prove that because of the limitation of the testing method. What I mean by that is when you have a colorless liquid, everything is water-based. The water is colorless. The reagents we use to measure antioxidant activity in the blood, so-called ORAC tests or so on, they do not register. They don't show any difference. So you're stuck. You said, test tube, yes. Inside the body, no. I was able to find, with the help of a lot of research and friends, this laboratory in Klamath Falls, Oregon. And the director of the laboratory is actually a highly trained lady who worked for McGill University in Montreal, Canada, for a long period of time, and has an impeccable record. And her passion is studying natural products for health benefits. And what she developed was a test that could measure antioxidants from anything, because it was a test that relied on living tissue culture antioxidant deprived red cells. Kind of a big mouthful. But that experience caught my eye. That study caught my eye. I consulted the lady. Fred and I went and made several visits, and we proposed to Mr. Oshiro that for some short money, we would like to test human neutrophils and human red cells for antioxidant and anti-inflammatory activity using the water. We didn't have any idea if this is going to work or not, but lo and behold, the antioxidant activity was profoundly shown in red cell tissue culture and against tap water. The brown is the tap water. And this was consistently so. And at the same time, we were able to show that the inflammatory response was subdued when you incubated the Kangen water with neutrophils. Now, neutrophils cause inflammation when they're challenged. And here, the inflammation is reduced. The free radical formation is subdued. And as a result, we are able to say that the that the water is not just anti-inflammatory in tissue culture, but also antioxidant. We had a few words about inflammation. Why is inflammation so important? Because it is the basis and the genesis of virtually 80% of human conditions, from arthritis, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, rheumatoid arthritis, all kinds of different lupus, you name it, all kinds of degeneration, and even atherosclerosis is all based on inflammation. The inflammatory response in the artery to some shearing force or elevated lipids results in an injury locally to the artery. The anti-inflammatory response, the inflammatory response then goes and tries to clean all of this up, and as a result, plaques are formed, and the plaques get bigger, and over time, you have a coronary occlusion or a distal artery occlusion, all based on inflammation. There's no infection involved, it's inflammation. And so this is very important, that when you have an agent that can reduce human inflammatory response, with no side effects. Mind you that every arthritic patient gets treated with drugs that are anti-inflammatory to some extent. In the earlier days, these were all aspirin related, and these drugs could have horrible side effects. You could bleed to death from your stomach ulcer and all kinds of stuff. And so this was never ideal. And now we have immune modulators, which are a little better, like for arthritis. But again, here is a substance, water, that because of its infusion of a living electric charge produces an anti-inflammatory effect. Think about that. There's zero side effects from it. Where do you have a drug with zero side effects? No such thing. This water has no side effects. It has anti-inflammatory, antioxidant properties. We also, by chance, got a freebie here because the tests for mitochondrial function, and basically translated, the engine of the cell is the mitochondria. That's where we produce energy. That's where glucose is converted into ATP. The ATP runs our muscles, conducts our nerves, gets our brain to function. And this activity is augmented upwards, favorably upregulated. Upregulation means the engine works better. You're giving that Kangen water to the mitochondria, and it's like one of those Hemi engines, you know. It stops running on 4 cylinders and runs on all 8. And that's a wonderful and important thing, because when we come to the next phase, by the way, those are just the copies of the reports and what have you. When we come to the next phase where we want to study it in the living human being, things become a little more problematic because expenses and restrictions on human experimentation, as it were. So the best thing we came up with after we discussed the funding with Mr. Oshiro, we came up with a plan that we would start with a simple 12-person human study of what the water does in a living person subjected to a predictable and repeatable stress. And we chose an exercise model for that. Why exercise? It's harmless. Exercise might make you ache or pain, but it's good for you, basically. Also, the particular place in Klamath Falls has a college. College students always need money. They are, remember my own days, you know, you always needed money. And they are well compensated for participating in the study. It's a harmless thing, and they can sort of say, hey, you know, it did some good. So it's a win-win for all, but you have to jump through a lot of hoops to get a study like that done. Mr. Oshiro agreed, and Mr. Oshiro said he would fund this study, and there it went. So the first study we did is designed up here. You can see we had 12 actually we had 13 participants, but 12 is the magic number when you manipulate statistics. You have to have at least 12 to eliminate what is called a population bias. You wouldn't get a pure study with 6 because there'd be other variables that wouldn't come out correctly. So with 12 and 13 we had, in case one dropped out. Here's the study. So for a 4-week study, we had 1 week tracking water consumption, 1 week of Kangen water, 1 week of washout, 1 week of consuming tap water. And during that time, these people had an SD501 machine installed at home or at work. They each were to drink 3 liters. And what we did is, of course, monitor that, make sure that they were in fact compliant. And then when they came for their exercise session, we had lengthy interview, they had a physical exam, they had blood tests, they were queried about consumption of alcohol and drugs 48 hours before, and so on. And then they actually underwent the study. In the meantime, we presented the Sky Lakes Medical Center Internal Review Board. You have to have an internal review board to be allowed to do a human study and register it with the National Institute of Health under the clinicaltrials.gov, and we have it in there registered. Now, what does that registration mean? Probably nothing to most people, except that unless the National Institute of Health allows you to register that study, it has to follow their guidelines and standards, which means if you don't measure up to those, you don't get anywhere. So the study was scientifically sound and valid and registered at clinicaltrials.gov. Here's the laboratory. They advertised the study locally, and people came. It was actually fairly quickly that we got enough people to do it. And so we basically had the clinic visit and went through what I mentioned before, the physical exam and everything else. And then we also did a psychological assessment. And feelings, pains, aches, they are subjective things. The person tells you what they are. But in order to be consistent, the American Psychiatric Association has protocols that are reproducible and solid, where you ask a series of questions of people, they're all the same, and you can expect that their answers are valid and that they would be different if certain things were changed. Like, the answers would be different if the Kangen Water was different versus the regular water. So here you go, push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, squats, and the whole enchilada there. And then the completion of the questionnaire, and a lot of blood drawing for serum and plasma to be frozen and analyzed later. Some of the blood tests were like a white blood cell count, red blood cell count, hemoglobin, and so on. They were done all along, lactate levels and what have you. But the other tests, which were to be reserved for cytokines and for other different internal biologic markers, those were deferred because of cost issues, and the samples frozen. This is the process, just illustrating how the plasma is made, spun down, frozen at minus 80 degrees, and quite 60 samples per person were collected, okay, and stored. So the lactate level is every 15 minutes. In any case, here's the freezer, but here is what this study showed. And this is the first study ever done on electrolyzed reduced water in a sports stress-related situation with that many participants. You hear all about, Shan Stratton knows a lot of people who, athletes, big names that have that Kangen machine, and they love it. He and I actually did a study on National Football League players using the machine and lactate levels. So it's known that it is effective adjunct for sports and for athletes, but no hardcore data. So what did we find? The consumption of alkalinized ionized water or electrolyzed reduced water resulted in an improvement in performance, an improvement in recovery from the stress, an improvement from the overall experience of the stress. It was, people felt and looked better, and in the Kangen Water group, there was a highly statistical significance in elevation of the red blood cell count between 12 and 15%. Now that's a huge number. Where did they get the red cell count elevation from? The only way they could have gotten it is because of the electric activity, this profound intracellular stimulation that the water produces. I always make the analogy because I'm from Boston and we have the Boston Marathon, and nobody from Boston will ever win it. Everybody that wins it is from Kenya. Because these guys, first of all, they're 6'4" tall, skinny as a rail, and they live naturally at 14,000 feet, and they train at 14,000 feet. When they come to sea level, man, they've got a hematocrit of 50. They've got a red cell mass that is insane. And that's fair enough, you know, American athletes can go to Mount Washington or someplace and train. But in any case, that's why, because the oxygen carrying capacity of the blood has been augmented and elevated. And also, at the same time, the number of inflammatory cells in the peripheral blood were reduced compared to the tap water group. So these folks got over the joke more quickly and felt better. And finally, the psychology tests, the feeling that was imparted during the tests and after the tests and what have you, tap water versus Kangen was profoundly and statistically significantly different. And that ended that study and left us with a whole bunch of samples and no money to finish the study. I'm going to stop right here because I will show you with a second set of slides here in a minute. But I thought perhaps, Francesca, you might want to talk about, as a natural healer, as a naturopathic doctor, how you see this type of proven activity in a living system having an impact on your practice and also on your ability to say to your patients, I mean, you know, you can lie to your wife and you can lie to your girlfriend, but don't lie to your patients. They'll get you every time. You know that. You know, you don't lie to your patients. Yeah, I'm going to cure it. There is no such thing as 100%, but I think, well, please, take it away.
Thank you. So, hello everybody. I'm very honored to be here, especially to be here with Dr. Horst. Yes, he is an amazing healer. I'm going to call you that because you touch lives in a very healing way. So I think I'm going to start just by telling you I started as a nurse, a critical care nurse, and then working in ICU in New York at Long Island Jewish Medical Center, actually. I saw some of the most amazing things, and I saw people on stretchers that I was like, they're here by lifestyle choice. And so I decided I wanted to interrupt lifestyle choice. I can tell you one quick story that absolutely just threw me into wanting to become a naturopath. And I was there, I had this woman who had open heart surgery 3 times, April, July, October.
Wow. 3
times in 6 months because they couldn't figure out why she wasn't healing. And this was her last resort. She was 39, her husband and baby, and a little boy there at the bedside. Long story short, vitamin C is essential for growth and repair of new tissue. It's essential because our bodies don't make it. We've lost the enzyme in the liver actually to convert what needs to be converted to glycogen into vitamin C. So animals convert it, and they've studied them, and under stress they make huge amounts of vitamin C, and then they even out on an unstressful day. So under stress, certainly surgery is a major stress. So I found it interesting that no vitamin C or anything like that was given to any of the patients post-operatively. We were taught that basic in our class in school. I'm in this top medical place, and they're not listening to what they're telling us. So on the 5th day post-op, I fed her peaches that were in a juice in a little plastic container, which of course was sugar, no nutrients. She died on the 9th day. On the 9th day. I was so overtaken with this. At the time, we were given what we called our personal patients, so everybody had primary care. So you went to work. If you missed a day, when you come back, you get your primary patient. The doctor that was in charge in ICU wanted us to go into the surgery of our primaries whenever possible to observe the cardiac surgery so that we would also be able to anticipate needs they would have after seeing what happened to them. So, you know, I traveled with this woman on these 9 days, and I haven't forgotten her to this day. But I went down and saw the medical examiner. I said, I can't go home without knowing what happened to this lady. I mean, I can't go on and not really be able to figure this out. And he said, I will tell you what I'm writing on her death certificate if you tell me what you think it is. I said, yes, I think she died of malnutrition and scurvy. He said, you're 100% correct. Malnutrition and scurvy in a top medical school, in a top medical hospital in the United States. Well, that just, you know, revved me up, and I went back to school and became a naturopath. And so I still work in the hospital because, and before I moved to South Carolina, I was a nurse educator. And because I thought I need to give back to nurses, and I would tell them, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know in the hospital and everything that you need to know that I know, that you need to know for your life, and, you know, giving people healthy information for them to go on in their life. So that spurred me on in many ways. So my goal in being with this amazing company, I think, you know, that drive brought me here. I'm honored to have this wonderful husband who is also got this amazing scientific mind. And we're both committed to helping people put their life together in a way that moves them forward. Especially, I get so many patients now that come to me that conventional medicine says, we don't know what to do with you. Or, you know, there's nothing we can do for you. So I start with the basics. Yesterday, or 2 days ago before we flew here, I sat down with this interesting young man, and he asked me, what was the most important thing you tell people from the standpoint of their health? I said, I asked them what water they drink. He said, water? I said, yeah, water. I said, because they can do a lot of other things, and before I had the water, I did a lot of other things. But I see the impact of the healing with the water exponentially improved. So, so we had a long talk, but it was just, I mean, he got totally involved. He lives here, he's going to come here. He wants to get a water system, so wow. I hope that he follows through. But I think that the word that we give to people and the care that we give to them, let them know that there is hope, that your body has the ability to heal itself, but you have to give your body what it needs to heal itself. So we don't say that the water cures anything. The water is the way God made our body. Do you know that your body is the same percentage of water as is the earth? I found out was so fascinating. So, so we need a lot of water. It's 73.4% water, or thereabouts. And so that tells you that you need a lot of water. Your brain needs water. You become dehydrated in your brain before, when you're thirsty, you're already a dehydrated person. So I have a timer on my watch that my husband installed for me to remind me, because I get busy, to drink water. I have a grandbaby who was in, you know, a very detrimental situation, and he was going to have 5 hours or 5 months to live, and he's 10. He turned 10 in January. So I see walking miracles, and I stand for miracles. What looks like a miracle is a change in perception. So I am honored to tell you that I'm glad you're here. You're here for a reason, and the people that are here to serve you are very committed. Thank you.
Any questions right now before I go to part 2? Yeah.
How long was the study again? Was it 13?
Yeah.
How long of time period?
The whole study was about 6 weeks long, grand total. You know, they're gathering all the people together and then getting them all on a schedule, which actually is pretty good for most of these studies. You know.
I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah.
That's,
Well, let me see the other thing here.
did you always mean
Maybe,
I think I know.
let me help the doctor, please.